Amen.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Pastor Andrew and Deb for giving me this opportunity, for inviting me, in fact, to speak after I collapsed in a blubbering heap last week in the middle of the service. For those who were here, you might remember. For those who weren't here, that's what happened. I'm going to call this a tale of 3 C's and 3 families. Okay. The first C is the town of Llanelli. Can I hear you say Llanelli? Not bad. It's a Welsh word, difficult to pronounce, where I was born. A working class town, full of steel and tin works, and all around were coalfields. And on every street there was a chapel in the great Welsh nonconformist tradition, which broke away from the Church of England and the Church in Wales. I was brought up in that tradition. I went to Sunday school, I went to church until I was about 11, and then my father offered us the opportunity, which I think was quite enlightened as children, to continue to go or not. He wanted us to want to go. My brother and my sister peeled off into other Sunday afternoon pursuits, and I decided to go because I idolized my father, the way he thought politically, philosophically, religiously, and about how to interact with human beings. So I went with him until I was about 16. And then, as a person who was going to become a kind of global traveler, because I've lived in 13 countries and I've picked up or learnt 18 languages, there was something in me that had itchy feet in this tiny town, in this tiny church where I lived. And even though I knew every name of the person there, there was something in me that wanted something more. So I began to explore in the same town the Salvation Army. I went to Elim Pentecostal churches, where people's activity and behavior was exactly like this. But at that age, I wasn't maybe able to take it in. And then I went to a revival tent in a countryside where there were people dancing, speaking in tongues, which I later understood was called glossolalia, dancing, crying, speaking out, all at the same time. That held me for a while, but I was searching for something more. And then I came across the Catholic Church, because at that time, when John Paul II was the Pope, it seemed to be something more international. This was before any of the scandals came to light, for example. He was a polyglot, I was a polyglot. I kind of thought, this is Europe, this is the world, much more than in my 16-year-old arrogance, I thought of my town, which you get very familiar with the place where you're brought up. It doesn't hold the same resonance for you as the wider world. So I went there for a couple of years, and also because the girls in that church were Italian, and they were prettier than the Welsh girls. But then after that, I went to Oxford, to university, to study languages. And while I was there, I came back to the Methodist Church of my youth. And there was a minister there who was an expert at dealing with the two sides of the congregations. The students were all very heady intellectuals, and the townspeople, who were also very, very intelligent people, but they were looking for a different kind of thing. And he expertly weaved this path between the two congregations and brought us together with both scholarship and humour in exactly the same way that I saw Pastor Andrew last week. So happy was I in that church that actually I got confirmed at the age of 20. And I even went to see the minister and said to him, I feel a kind of calling, but I'm not quite sure yet how to use it. And he said, go away and think about it. And if you find that you have a calling, I'm sure the church will welcome you with open arms. So I did go away and think about it for about 40 years, and now I'm here again. And what I found is that during those 40 years, when I was living in countries like China, in Eritrea, in Africa, in Turkey, in Bangladesh, in Eastern Europe, in Czech Republic and Slovakia. I lived in France for 8 years. I now lived here for 8 years as well. And I embarked on a kind of journey of what we might call a spiritual supermarket. Because when you travel the world, you have a little statue of the Buddha in your house. You have some Hindu goddesses. And you pick up these things and you want to show everybody how worldly you are. You have joss sticks. If you really want to stand out, you have joss sticks and incense in the house. And you're picking and mixing, really, from around the world. You're doing a little bit of yoga, a bit of meditation. You're saying Om now and again. And it's kind of working for you. And at the same time I was in this spiritual supermarket, I was in this kind of intellectual journey towards what we would call humanism. And I used to think that what we believe in, what you believe in, was a kind of agglomeration of the best qualities of a human being. So for me, God was all the qualities that we have, the generosity, the friendship, the kindness, the mercy that I've seen here, this week and last week, rolled into one, and then worshipped, as if God was a kind of projection of something that was in us, which we chose to worship. And that's what I kind of believed for a long, long time. And I was quite happy with that for about 37 years, just drifting along, trying to be kind, never being nasty, being generous to people. And then something happened 3 years ago. I stepped outside my house, and the ground gave beneath me, and I found myself spinning downwards into a kind of state that I was frightened of, I'd never had before, a kind of depression. When you start on a depression road, you find that you feel worthless, you've got much less energy than you usually have, you find that you withdraw, you don't want to go out and meet your friends, you don't want to go out and play sport, even though that's exactly what you should do, but you just can't find the energy to do that. That was the first time, and then after about 3 months, it kind of lifted. And I had no idea. It's just like a ray of sunshine piercing through the clouds. And it was gone. And I thought, what was that all about? But at least it's gone and it'll never happen again. But I spoke too soon. Because I had a period then of 3 months of a kind of euphoria. And in a euphoric state, I'm a bit like I am today, even though I'm not in that state now. The same manifestation outward. I'm able to speak, to go out and meet people. I have creative ideas, because I'm essentially a creative in my work. Lots of inspiration, able to mobilize people and get people together. And that's fine, and I set up all kinds of new projects when I was like that, in that state, only to find that 3 months later, it hit me again. Somebody would say something, and I would find like a shimmer in the atmosphere, my antenna would twitch. And I thought, oh no, please, please, not again. I thought that was just once. And it happened again. The problem is that the second time it happens, you've already dug a hole the first time, so when you fall into it, you're starting at the bottom of where you were last time. And your thoughts are now going down this road, which was a lane, and then a road, and then a motorway, and now it's a superhighway. You begin to have what psychologists call suicidal ideation, which means occasional thoughts of suicide. I had that, and also I had a habit of ruminating, and again, that's another technical word in psychology, which means thinking in ever smaller circles, trying to think your way out, using your human brain, out of the situation you're in. And if any uncharitable, or even a charitable Christian had said to me, so how's your humanism working for you now? I would have had to say, not that great, actually. I was down there again for 3 months. My ex-wife, long-suffering, like an angel. It's not easy to be with somebody who's depressed. One day it all got too much, and I went down to the second C in my story with a knife in a carrier bag and my ID card. And I went into the water and I began to cut, but I realized later that God made a human hand very strong, stronger than another hand with a knife. So I was there in the water for about 3 hours. My wife woke up, saw a note on the floor, called the police, and I was in the water still trying to do this thing, and my hand wouldn't let me, but I was cutting. And then I saw a policeman in full uniform walking along the beach, which is quite an unusual sight. And he said to me, "What's your name?" And I said, "Andrew." He said, "Come here." So I did, like a good boy, walked towards him. Then they took me to the hospital. Then I lifted out of it again. And that's another 3 months. And during the high periods, you don't recognize the person you were. You think, how on earth did I get into that state? But then when you went to a low state again, you think, how on earth was I feeling so good 3 weeks ago? So this happened quite a few times. And over the 3 years, I would say maybe half of that time, I was in the low state and getting lower and lower. They get more and more intense as you get older. So what was the answer? Well, I tried to find my way out of it. I spoke to a dozen therapists, who all of them asked about my mother. It's nothing to do with it, or my childhood, or anything like that. I mean, they fade in, but I wanted a solution, not to really go digging for some memory that I've repressed, or something which didn't happen. And one therapist said to me, like I told you last week who were here, she said to me, let me get some water. That's not what she said. It's funny, I actually love speaking to people, but my hands tremble and my mouth goes dry. I don't know why. I used to be a teacher, by the way. So the screen opens, and here's this woman I've never seen before from betterhelp.com, which is one of these online therapy places. She was from Brazil. She looked like an aging hippie. She curly, lots of curly grey hair. And I just kind of broke down for the umpteenth time and said, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in hell. And she said, Andrew, it's time to come home. Now, she was in Brazil. I was in Spain. She didn't say go home. She said come home. So she was giving me like a key on a velvet cushion, a golden key, but I had no idea where the door was. But it stuck with me. Of all the words I heard, of all the therapists, that stuck with me. But then the problem didn't go away. I got divorced. I think my wife had probably, understandably, come to the end of her tether of dealing with somebody who was on a roller coaster. And so we separated amicably. And then I spent 6 months living on my own in La Cala. So I used to be in Cala Honda, and then I moved far away to another country called La Cala, where they speak a different language. But the natives are very friendly there. So I was there, but my state didn't get any better. I was still up and down, up and down. I was a functioning depressive in the sense I never missed a meeting. My professional duties always came first. So I would get up, even if I didn't want to, shave, go to my meetings on Zoom or whatever, and do my work. But then it got worse and worse, and it got to the point where in my last depression, which was about 3 months ago, I was a dysfunctional depressive. I began to miss meetings. I began to go to the beach early in the morning, at 6 in the morning, again with a knife in my bag, and each time thinking, I have to die. It wasn't a suicidal ideation, it was a suicidal obsession. I thought, I'm worthless. Everything I've ever done is nothing. I've managed to break up 2 marriages. I've achieved nothing in my professional career. I have no worth. And it was symbolized by the fact that I went to a Chinese shop and bought a cutter, you know, the kind for opening parcels, for €1.50. That was the price of my life. Okay. I walked to the beach on several occasions. The shortest I was there was for 4 hours. Okay. What I'd done is written all the emails to my family, friends, colleagues, ex, and a message for Facebook, where I write quite a lot. And I had 3 bank payments to make. And I stood there knowing that if I pressed any one of those send buttons, it would be like a domino effect. I'd have to send all of the other messages because I can't have my family receiving this message and my friends not. So one would be a cascade, and then I would have to make the bank payments. Or I would start with the bank payments, and once they went, people would be saying, why are you sending us this money? By then, I would have sent the emails. So basically, it was one click of the thumb. The shortest time was 4 hours. The longest time was 9 hours. Standing on the beach in La Cala, thinking this is the last day of my life, trying to dredge up everything that was sad to really make me go for it. And something stayed my hand. It was so close to doing it. And in the end, I couldn't. So I turned around and went home saying, what a loser. You can't even kill yourself. People manage that all around the world every day. You can't even do that right. So I went home, and then my colleague said to me, because I've been out of work all day, 9 hours on a work day, I had messages saying, are you hiding? Have you gone missing? What's up? My colleagues are people that I know and love and protect me, and they know a little bit about my story. So I said to them, no, I was just feeling a bit ill today, and I'm back. But they knew what was going on. And one of them said to me, get yourself checked into a place. Go and sort this out. It's getting worse. And we're getting alarmed about, we've always been a little bit concerned and then worried. Now we're getting alarmed. So I went to a clinic on the other side of Malaga for 10 days. And I spoke to 2 people. One was a psychiatrist who said, okay, there's a chemical answer here. There's a lack of dopamine or serotonin or whatever not being produced enough. A very scientific answer. And take these pink, green, and yellow pills, which I now take religiously, no pun intended. And then I saw a psychotherapist every day. And again, we began to talk about the old stories, and I'd said them a million times. But I said, here's my problem. There's a black wall here with an exit sign, like a cinema, a neon sign. And I'm called towards it every single day of my life. And it's an escape from responsibility, from the after effects of divorce, from all the things that you're dealing with in your life. And every time I go towards it, I begin to think about the logistics of it, the mess, the physical mess, then the emotional mess, and the grieving in the people's, in my family, my parents who are still alive, who gave me that life, and thinking of all the after effects that would happen. So I would turn around. The moment I turn around, there's another wall right here, which is equally black. It's got graffiti all over it. And the graffiti says, you're old. I'm 60 this year. So you're old, which is obviously not old, but that's where your mind gets distorted. Your parents are ailing. My father's got dementia. My mother is, having created beautiful homes, is now in a small room in an old people's home, a residence. So that's ahead of you. You're single. No one's going to want to meet you now. Look at you, such a pathetic loser. All of that kind of thing was going around in my mind all the time. So I would turn away from this wall and go back to the exit. And this thing would happen about 400 times a day. And I would be lying down on the sofa just looking at the ceiling thinking, I have to go, I can't go. I have to go, I can't go. And when I spoke to the psychotherapist, he said, he just took a single sheet of blank paper. He drew two parallel lines. And he said, you're looking at this wall and this wall, but there's a third way out of this. I thought, God, that's good. That's really good. But again, it was another key, and I had no idea to what. And it was when I came here last week, and I was welcomed warmly from the moment I stepped into church, and then there was this magnificent family playing their music. And I started having all this emotion pouring out of me, and I suddenly thought, this is home. And this is the third way, in this place, and in this faith. And then that same day, I got baptized. So that was the third C of my story. So there was one I was born, one where I wanted to kill myself at least 5 times, and then the one where I was baptized, which I hope and believe and know will be the last one. Okay? One more thing I'll say. I mentioned 3 C's and 3 families. When I began to look into this, having left that town behind me, because for me the world was Manhattan, Singapore, Dubai, not Llanelli, even though I was born and brought up there, and it's a great place with a famous rugby team and all the rest of it. But it was home, and home is always a little bit too familiar if you're a traveller. So I looked into my family, and I suddenly realised that we have a very rich Christian tradition in the family. And that is, my father was a lay preacher, my grandfather was a lay preacher, my grandmother's brother was a Baptist minister at a time when those chapels were full, and they would be full 3 times on a Sunday and once on a Wednesday, where people would gather to sing hymns, just to sing hymns and raise the roof. Okay? A bit like we did today, but more traditional hymns. I have his son, so the minister's son, is a religious broadcaster, academic, theologian, presenter, and writer. And then on the other side, I have 2 female first cousins who are not much older than I am, who in the church where I was brought up have kept that building literally standing. They've had to repair the roof. They've had to renew the schoolroom. And now it's a thriving community where they open up on Wednesdays, for example, for the homeless of the area to come and get hot soup. And those 2 women, so my cousins, and I'll send them a shout out because everyone will be watching this, will acknowledge that even though they don't talk about theology, they don't preach about much, but they do the work, and they've been doing it all their lives. And they're now in their 60s, and they're still there, and they were the ones who supervised the youth club when I was going there as a teenager, and they're still there. Their late father helped. He was very good and instrumental in building the church again. And their late mother, their mother, who's still alive, goes to the church every Sunday, as she has done all her life, which is 92 years old. 93, I'm not sure, and is still there every week, and still goes to meet other people in this gathering for the homeless. She's not homeless by any means, but she goes to be part of it. Because it's not just people coming off the street, it's members of the church who go there, and they mingle together, which is surely an act of humility and an act of generosity. So that was my first family, and I reached out to all of them. And one more person in the family was a cousin who was an evangelical Christian from the age of 18, and that's 46 years ago. I was always seen in our family as a lovely guy, but it's the religious one. Just don't talk about being saved or not. Okay. He was the first person I called, and I said to him, Jeremy, I've got a sentence for you that I think is going to surprise you. He said, he's a very funny guy. He said, okay, try me. I said, today I got baptized in the Mediterranean. He said, yeah, okay, that has surprised me quite. We had a long chat about theology, and about, not theology, but about faith. Then I called my father's cousin, who's the broadcaster. We spent hours talking, and he put me in the way of C.S. Lewis, which is also recommended by Daniel, and other books which would help nurture. I reached out to my cousins, who are the ones who are in the church every week, and they were delighted. Everyone I spoke to was delighted. And then what I began to do is tell friends who were close to me. Initially, I was a little bit guarded about that, thinking I'd rather do the thing and have people ask me what's happened than suddenly start waving a placard in the middle of the marketplace. But I found that when I was with people, that's what I wanted to talk about. Everything else seemed a little bit like talking about the weather. And I was really surprised that people who I would have thought would have been quite resistant welled up. Including my ex-wife. We met, I told her, she welled up. And then an Irish guy from Dublin, who I played paddle with for years, tough guy, he welled up. There's something strange happening here. And that led me to understand that this here was my second family. And I realized also that I've developed relationships which are stronger in 1 week in this church than in 4.5 years living on the Costa del full English, okay? Basically, I've got 1 or 2 people that I've really got to know quite well and who were there for me during the Depression. And one of them, who's called Simon, led me to Fons and to Daniel. So we have Simon, Andrew, Daniel, and the woman I met very briefly, who spoke so softly that I had to get my ears sorted out, was called, you won't believe this, Eve. So we have Simon, Daniel, Andrew, and Eve. Then I came here through this weird set of circumstances. She was from Kenya, came into my life and out of it in a single week. But she gave me 2 gifts. One is that she made me go to Daniel, because I was fed up of saying what all the time. Then she disappeared. But she also had a dream of going to Barcelona, and I used to live there, and I went and researched it and thought, actually, for my new business, it's a better place to be. So I'm going in just 2 weeks. So this sojourn here in this church will have been 3 weeks in total. But I will always look back on this place as a turnaround place, a point of inflection. And I think, even though I'll find... Thank you. I'll find a new church in Barcelona, and I hope and pray it's as good as this one. I'll look for one. This will be my model when I go there. They will be my 3rd family, but this 2nd family is one that I'll always remember. So thank you for your welcome and for your love. Amen.